The Vietnam War saw the use of many different types of weapons and tactics. Some range from certain types of firearms all the way to things that have a questionable legal status. But in Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam, you are able to test out all these historically accurate things, and we are going to be putting them on a tier list. We will start at F tier, which are things that are equivalent to my math grades in high school. All the way up to things that may or may not get you banned. Who am I kidding? If you play in a certain region of the world that shall not be named, you could spam the N-word in chat, you could spawn camp, you could do whatever the hell you want because no one's gonna be moderating it. But of course, use the knowledge that you gained from this video with some respect. Regardless, let's get stuck into it. Alright, so we'll start off with F tier. Most of these things I don't find are that good, or I just simply don't like them. And to start us off, we have the ARVN mortars. It's like throwing hand grenades at the enemy, that's how weak they are. But they consist of mortar shells fired in 9 salvos with an abysmal 36 meter bombardment radius, meaning the intended target can easily walk around the area with very minimal damage done to them. They don't have nearly the scare factor as the US airburst shells or the NLF barrage, since they cover a humongous area. Like, the thing is, I'm embarrassed to get killed by the ARVN mortars because they're so avoidable, but they are good for holding down a point for longer and preventing enemies from capping an objective. But moving on to the mounted Browning 50 cal. This thing is fun to use when you have enemies that are blind, deaf and dumb, but most of the time you're basically giving a free headshot to someone as soon as you use them. But I have this great idea, okay, and call me crazy, but what if, and I've tried this a couple of times, you get smokes and you throw them in front of the machine gun, because then they're not going to be able to see you or hit you accurately. Sure, an experienced marksman is probably going to be able to find where the traces are coming from, but if you throw a couple of smokes in front of the machine gun, you can just blind fire into the forest, and sure, at the worst case, you'll just be suppressing the enemy, but who knows, you might actually end up getting a kill. But other than that, they have very limited use, and I don't necessarily recommend someone use them. The next thing on the list is going to be very controversial, and just someone's going to clip this and they're going to say that I'm not a good person, but that is white people. And what I mean is that there is no reason to use the white skin tone because you stand out much more on night maps as well as against different types of foliage. The black skin tone offers superior protection at night as well as against different types of foliage, and especially when you combine it with the pay to win face paint, then you're basically undetectable. So the next thing on the list is bad servers. Now, what I consider a bad server is one that has 2 rounds enabled, lots of shitty custom maps, isn't 60 Hz, oh, and it has the name Mega in it.
Bonnie, how do you keep getting back in?
Now, I'm not going to single anyone out, but those servers know who they are, especially when there's like little admin moderation. Like, I'm edgy, okay? I do enjoy the occasional dark humor here and there, but when you have someone running around with like the N-word, like hard R in their name, and then like screaming the N-word over like microphone and in chat and nothing getting done about it, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, like I don't want to have to play RS2 and have to see that. Alright, so starting us off with D tier, we have Claymores. Are they satisfying clearing a whole room of Viet Cong with? Yes. But are they harder to use than what they're worth? Also yes. But they work by putting them on the ground and waiting patiently for an enemy to walk in front of it. But most of the time, you aren't going to be that useful for your team by sitting around. So what I like to use the Claymores for is to play aggressive with them, and what I mean by this is you run where the enemies are huddled, you place the Claymore down, and then you press the clacker. Now, I don't understand why you couldn't just shoot the enemy, but if you want to finesse on them, you can do it like that. Now moving on to my favorite strat in the game, which just so happens to be one of the worst, it requires you to channel your inner weeb so you can kamikaze people with the helicopter. In games like Battlefield, this isn't that bad since you really only kill yourself, but the amount of times I've been in a nosedive and someone spawns in the back of the heli and yells at me for killing them, it's a lot, and I'm not blaming them since this is purely my fault, but you can fly aggressively towards someone and clip them with your blades as well, and I'd say it's more effective than just dive bombing onto them, especially since the explosion radius is pretty small, but I'm not gonna say it isn't the funniest thing I've ever seen in game. Now, the next thing on the list is one of the reasons as to why I bought Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam in the first place, and that is being a door gunner in a Huey and screaming out "get some" with some rock music playing. Obviously, in my fantasy they aren't civilians, but are actual threats, but the door gunner in RS2 is a pain in the ass to use because you think you're hitting the VC, but you're not actually. But the main purpose of using it is to suppress anyone that might be shooting at the helicopter, and it makes the landing process easier, but most of the time that's not how things go. Now what you can do is you can have a friend hop in the back of the heli and you can strafe around the map and have him try to get a kill or two, but I mean after 1000 hours in the game I still haven't gotten that one achievement that only a select few have, and that is get 25 door gunner kills. That's how hard it is. Alright, so moving on to C tier. This is where things are on the average side of things. They aren't good, nor are they bad. But to start us off, we have the hand grenade. It's nice and effective, it can save your ass in clutch moments. Sometimes you might wipe out a whole squad or a whole squad of friendlies, but compared to other hand-thrown ordnance, they're pretty mediocre. Grenades are best used when they're cooked and try to get a little air boost effect when you throw them, but to utilize them to maximum effectiveness like level 99 players, rather than shoot the enemy or throw grenades at them from afar, what you do is you sneak into a large crowd of them, you pull the pin, and you don't throw the grenade. What are you, a fucking level 10 noob? Jesus Christ. You sit in the crowd and then you blow yourself up. And for maximum effectiveness, you gotta play Arabic music over the microphone, which, if it worked properly, that is. Now, moving on to submachine guns, I do apologize to my good friend Dietrich because he is the grease man, but some submachine guns are better than others. Some dominate entire classes in the right scenario, but compared to something like a battle rifle which is effective at all ranges, or a shotgun that can also be the same, submachine guns can one-shot, others have incredible rates of fire, but they mainly just dominate at close quarters, but beyond that, their usefulness is heavily limited. The off chance I'm domed by a guy using a Thompson from 100 meters away, I always have to stand from my desk and remove myself from the situation and try to breathe. Because I may or may not have injured myself playing Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam because I got a little too angry, but that's a story for another time. So the next thing on the list involves you going back in time to World War I and II, when charging at the enemy to gain a couple meters of land was considered a good strategy, or to do something that would traumatize me as a child when I played World at War and Medal of Honor Rising Sun, and that is charging at the enemy with your bayonet. Attaching it does affect the way that the gun handles slightly, but it's not noticeable. Also, it does make it longer, but it can help you out in clutch moments. But the one reason why I love the bayonet is because of this one thing. You can prime the attack animation and you can actually run out of the combat area with it primed, and you can kill people you might not be able to easily kill with bullets. You could theoretically spawn camp. I don't know how incompetent the enemy team is to let you do this. You run in, kill one person, run back out of the combat area or into the combat area, prime it again, run back to the spawn again and just spawn kill someone again. Don't do that, that's wrong. But when the voice chat decides to work, screaming banzai over the local chat with a bunch of other guys is something you have to experience, or you could just do it in Risiong Storm 1. But moving on to B tier, this is above mediocrity, but nothing superb. And to start us off with something interesting, we have the sniper class, which alongside the pilot role and the combat engineer are the most sought after roles. And yes, you can dominate at long range, you can hit people before they even have the chance to realize what's happening. However, compared to let's say a shotgun, snipers are a lot harder to master, especially at ridiculous engagement distances unless you've practiced a lot. And personally, some of the snipers are worse than the battle rifle counterparts. Changed my mind, but the Mosin without the PU is much easier to use. Trying to hit targets past 200 meters, just gotta sit closer to your monitor. In real life, the Vietnam War sounds absolutely horrifying, knowing that not only would you encounter some disgusting flying cunts out in the jungle, but also the fact that you could be impaled by a trap. That's just absolutely horrifying. And in this game, you get a little taste, such as the punji, which according to the Anzacs is a self-pleasuring device, but you also have toe poppers and fugas and more. But every infantry VC gets a punji, and if all 30 people actually use them, the South would have a significantly harder time pushing, and it takes no more than 10 seconds to do it unless you're planting fugas. I suppose you could use the shovel to bonk people with, but there is no special icon, so I don't really see much of a point in doing that. The next thing on the list is smoke grenades, whether it's the white ones or the purple ones or the red and yellow ones that Anthony decided to place on me when I was using the radio as a commander once, basically putting a giant beacon above my head, but focusing on the normal smoke screens. They can make or break a push. I even suggest people switch to the radio man role just to use them, and sometimes when I'm playing as a scout or point man, I just completely forget I have them. Now, the next thing on the list is one of my favorite things in Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam, a weapon that makes Thor's hammer look like a child's toy, and that is the Matic. It allows Viet Cong to spawn out of the ground. It is also one of the most broken weapons in the game, and I'll reveal more of that later on. But the idea of running around with a farming tool, bonking GIs on the head, and getting a 7 kill streak leading to your character saying, which, fun fact, this was actually implemented into the game because of the YouTuber Sevra, I hope that's how I pronounce it properly, and it's actually one of the secret achievements that you can get in the game. But the Matic and we share something in common. When I use it in RS2, I swear I'm invisible and not as easily detected, and it's the same with women in real life. I'm invisible, but that's another story for another day. When you're just sick of using firearms and you just want to muck around and have some fun in the game, trying to get a 7 kill streak with the Matic is definitely something you should try. But there is a player that I want to mention, and that is Harry420. I haven't seen him a lot lately, but he was so good with the Matic that he got banned because apparently he was invisible with it, which I don't know, maybe he was cheating. I doubt he was, because he's gotten me so many times with it, and he just pops out of nowhere and he fucking scares you, mate. Alright, so moving on to A tier, this is when things are considered great, and to start us off is the flamethrower. The main purpose is to remove foliage, well, according to Geneva, that's what you're supposed to use it for, but that didn't stop people from using it with nefarious intent. But it's very effective when a squad leader has one and camps in a spot near a point, because it can absolutely decimate at close range. Beyond that, not so much. I mean, I suppose you can try and blind the enemy or spin around like a helicopter, but a cool fact is that the flame can bounce off the walls, which means you can get some pretty sick wall bangs as a result. I would also say that this is one of the most annoying guns to use and to fight against, because I feel like when a speck of like a spark or a little speck of fire lands on my character, I just combust. But for some reason when I use it, I suck at it, to say the least. Alright, so we're gonna dial up the war crimes meter, because compared to the standard grenades, white phosphorus is significantly better because it has a bigger burst radius, but best of all, you can get like a little air burst effect going on, and it can also linger for a bit, so it's basically a grenade on steroids. The next thing on the list has to be grenade launchers. You can lob shells halfway across the map and wipe out a whole squad of enemies or friendlies, but if you miss at close quarters, you leave yourself very vulnerable. But if your aim is good enough, you'll still be able to kill people without having the actual grenade explode. But sure, while the 40mm US launcher is cool, especially since it has mixed munitions, but the Viet Cong improvised mortar is where the fun is at. You can either run right into your enemy and kamikaze them, or you can sit and spawn like a filthy rat and use your squad move marker to pinpoint where you want to hit. But I'll let you guys in on a little secret, okay? Just come in here. Don't tell anyone I told you this. But if you sit and spawn and go to the weapon select menu and you swap pistols, you'll instantly respawn with more mortar ammo. And to add on to this, if you go into an empty server with a friend, you can have him run towards the point and you can shoot roughly where he is. Like, you can have him start at spawn, run towards the point, and you can sit and spawn as well, and you can sort of like determine where he is, or based on the player movement. I'm probably not explaining it properly, but just look on screen. And when you go into a live server, you'll be able to feel the kill feed in record time. Even on some maps, this is a very good strategy. Sure, on like a map like Waste City, it's not that good. But when I notice a very certain player is on the enemy team, I'm literally spamming in chat to everyone in spawn to disperse, because I know that he's going to do this exact thing. Do people listen? No, of course not. It's Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam. Voice chat doesn't work, and I'm convinced that some people can't read properly. But if you have good aim and estimation kills, then you'll be able to abuse this pretty well. Alright, so I know that A, B, and so on tiers stand for a letter grade, but what does S stand for? Special? Supreme? Shit? No. It stands for shotguns, and they're going to be starting us off in S tier, and they come in many different sizes and body shapes, but they all have one thing in common, and that is the fact that they are probably the best weapons in the game. They can dominate close quarters, they can dominate at long range. You will be dominated whether you like it or not. And fun fact, back in the olden days of RS2, before I even played the game, the VC shotguns were so broken because the range made the current shotguns and even some sniper rifles blush, and these have thankfully been nerfed, but I still will proclaim this class as the supreme firearm in the game, because you can just get one-shotted by it. There's very little you can do to counter it other than fire first and hope that he didn't fire at all. So the Russian counterpart to the Browning 50 cal in RS2 is the Dushka. It fires big beefy ammo. When it comes to Americans, yeah, it can shred through them like hot knife through butter. Hueys, Cobras, Loaches, this thing can be more annoying than SAMs and RPGs because they can completely deny a whole area of airspace. But the reason why it's an S tier is because of one thing, and that is you don't have to have a commander, or if the commander is being useless, which can be the case sometimes, if the enemy commander calls in a spooky, with the right leading and technique, you can actually shoot down the spooky with the Dushka. And the thing is, no matter how much I've tried, I can't do it, but it is possible. Heck, one game, this guy sat in the back of the map and he shot down every recon that I called in. Admittingly, he pissed me off, but fair game, you know, I was basically calling in artillery, napalm spookies blind. But another good thing about them is they can be placed pretty much anywhere and they can be relocated at a moment's notice, but this also means that the Americans can steal it, and yes, pilots have done it in the past. I've tried, but with little to no success. Honestly, at this point, I probably should have just put the entire engineer class in S tier since it's the best class in the game, but I will be putting C4 here. It is easily one of the most destructive weapons in the game. It's borderline nuke territory, and it gives General MacArthur a boner just at the thought of it. Sure, you might take out your teammates in the process, or even yourself, but in war, there will be collateral, and there's nothing you can do about it. Alright, so moving on to the RPG, which is really good destructive power. It can obliterate people standing behind walls, and when used properly, it can cause a lot of trouble for helicopters. Now, similar to the Dushka, you can use it to shoot down the spooky if your aim is good enough, but I have not been able to do it. You can also even shoot down the Phantom, which that and the spooky is a trigonometry achievement. You can also shoot down recon planes, which people have done to me continuously, and it frustrates me. And yeah, sure, while you can use it for these reasons, no level 99 supreme player is going to use it like this. Instead, what you do is you run towards the enemy, don't fire, you turn around, and then you shoot and hope that the backblast kills them. And also you want to hope that the rocket doesn't go into your teammates, which has happened to me a couple of times because I'm not very self-aware. Alright, so moving on to helicopters. When you put a good pilot in the seat, these things can make or break the resort map. You stick someone like Alpha in the Cobra, you are destined to win. Of course, he can only do so much and sometimes your team is that incompetent, but if you put someone like me in the transport heli, there is a 66.6678% chance that, based on data I have collected on every time that I've tried to leave spawn, I am most likely going to clip my rotors with someone else's helicopter, and then I'm gonna get bullied in game chat. Deservingly so, but the Huey's really only purpose is to take troops to and from the battlefield on resort. Sure, you can use the door gunner, but unless you have a competent pilot, you're most likely not going to hit shit. Now, I suggested, right, we get the Browning 50 cal and slap it on these bad boys to give them more of a purpose, but then people complained about historical inaccuracy and that the Huey can't hold it. Well, I'm sorry for thinking of solutions for these piss-weak LMGs, but in all seriousness, the purpose is to suppress people on the ground, and most importantly people with RPGs, and to make the whole landing process easier. But when we have a look at the Cobra, it can absolutely decimate a point, especially if you have a pilot who knows how to circle strafe. Sometimes I struggle to do it, but when you can get into the rhythm of it, you can absolutely decimate. I mean, I can't even see half the time at what I'm shooting at. And when we have a look at the Loach, if you stick a good pilot in it, they can rack up a good couple of kills, but the main purpose of the Loach is to act as a radio for the commander so they can, lean out and get some good marks. But it also has a recon ability, which I get so frustrated when the Loach pilots don't do this on resort, but if they fly low enough, they'll light up all the enemies, including tunnels, and when I'm flying over with the Cobra, I'm able to literally hit the fucking tunnels with the laser accuracy.
We lost the tail rotor, it's gone!
So the next thing on the list is playing on a good server, and I want to say thank you to all the people who keep the servers running, because from what I heard it isn't cheap. For a couple of special mentions, we have Rice, who reached into the charitable part of his heart and granted me a membership for his server, which made making videos significantly easier. We have Mr. Dead, who does have some pretty fun custom maps that he plays on his server. He introduced me to the zombies game mode, and it's actually a lot of fun. You gotta try it one time. Now, when it comes to the Broken Arrow server, I don't know who the owner is. All I know is I don't actually know how to say this. Is it Haifa or Heifer Cakes? This guy has over 5,000 hours in RS2. I have 1,000 and I'm completely burnt out, okay? I resent the game sometimes and I get frustrated. He has 5,000. I don't know how the fuck he does it. I request politely, don't take this as any offense, leave your desk, turn your computer off, go outside, preferably during the daytime, and touch grass. If you don't have any grass, go to a park if there's no parks nearby. I don't know, I think you can buy some plants online. But leading off from the servers, and that is watching some of the various RS2 YouTubers, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them and getting to know them. That includes HexDK, who, his voice, man, he's just so ASMR-esque. He could start an ASMR channel and I'd be his #1 fan. But there's also Sam the Schruber, whatever he likes to be called, who for some reason I thought that a British person was from Texas. That's not even a joke, I'm being 100% serious, I thought he was from Texas. And there's also Break Devices, who gave me some advice on audio improvements. I had the pleasure of playing against Sevrar in military conflict Vietnam. He just wiped the floor with my ass. And there's also Paradox, who's probably the biggest troll that I've ever met in gaming history. He tricked me into into thinking that he's from Queensland, which he wasn't. He's a fucking New Zealander posing as an Australian. I don't even know if he's from New Zealand either. Either way, he apparently deleted his own YouTube channel, so...
Fortnite and Marquez Brownlee.
And leading off from the YouTubers, we're going to talk about custom content that range from maps to gameplay overhauls, but the specific ones that I want to talk about is the Talvisoda Winter War mod, which is the Finnish vs Soviet war that happened in 1939. It's actually really fun. It's a complete change of location, but the GOM 4 mod is so much fun, and I hope that more servers do adopt it because there's just so much more content that you have to play with, and that also includes tanks and APCs as well as new weaponry and factions.
16 times the detail.
The next thing that I'm going to talk about is controversial, and only the best players in Risiong Storm do this, or gaming in general that is, and that is playing the objective. Now, I'll admit, in this game, sometimes I muck around and do stupid things. In games like Counter-Strike, I don't sit on the objective and try to defend it. I might go off and play for kills, because I'm a silver, that's what I do. But if you really want to win, just doing this can actually sway the game in your favor. Sure, if the teams are stacked, then there's a strong chance you'll still lose, but getting on the point, putting up a strong defense, it will make it harder for the enemy to win. And this also includes squad leaders getting on the point and just sitting there hiding and letting your teammates spawn, and then they can go and defend and clear out the flanks. Alright, but now we're in the home stretch, and I'm going to show you guys some things that are more so frowned upon, so use them appropriately. So have you ever wondered how people can run around and spawn? Well, all you have to do is use a trap or a matic before the start match timer has ended. You might have seen people running around and spawn. Some of you might have reported me to the admins for hacking, but it's a glitch that never got fixed. And when I use it, I try not to run too far out. Really, all I do is I just weave in and out of people and spawn because it's just funny, because you do confuse the occasional new player. The next thing is what I like to call the Matic Binoc glitch. I was shown this by the legend himself, Harry420, alongside a bunch of other tips to use the Matic to the best of its ability, but basically you equip binocs, and when you run out of the combat area, if you switch the Matic and as the animation is playing, you press the middle mouse button and it will prime the Matic, but don't sprint, otherwise it will cancel it. And while yes, like I said in the bayonet category, you could theoretically spawn camp with this method, please don't do that, but I wouldn't say I didn't hunt down the enemy commander and kill him every now and then just to sort of mess with them, but I wouldn't do this continuously because I've had a mental breakdown when it's been done to me, so I do it like once and say, haha, get fucking pranked, bitch. Now, the next thing on the list, some people regard it as a cheat, but a lot of people do it, and that is pressing F3 to open up the console and typing in Gamma 3 on night maps to make everything much brighter. If it was considered a cheat, I don't know why it isn't disabled like the other console commands, but I also just turn up the brightness on my monitor, and it greatly does help. But if you are a new player struggling to see anything on maps like Long 10, just do this and your experience will be much better.
I can't hear you! It's too dark in here!
Alright, so the next thing on the list isn't really cheesy, but it's pretty clever. But if you know about a player called Anthony, he does a thing where he spams that he needs ammo. My advice is don't try to give him ammo if he's tricking you. But in all seriousness, the reason why he does this is because you can actually see where he is on your screen. Because there have been times where I've been playing with a couple of friends and I didn't know where a certain one was. So by spamming that they need ammo, I know exactly where they are. It isn't as annoying as Battlefield's 2's spotting feature, thank God for that.
Enemy wheelbarrow spotted!
Now, these are all the things that I consider to be good and bad in Risiong Storm 2 Vietnam. And, you know, as we're all aware, the certainty of 83 coming out is not as high of a probability of it actually happening. My optimism was very high a couple of months ago, but considering the fact that they've got the whole Discord basically on lockdown where only the community moderators are put in charge of basically running the show, all the Discord channels except for like 2 have been basically shut down. But I suppose they did this simply because they didn't want to miss out on any new things that are added mattered, because if people continuously posted in like the suggestions channel and whatnot, then they'd have a lot to go through. But regardless, it looks like it's gonna be a 2024 release. If you're alive or dead by then you know, it's a shame. Really, all we can do is just hope that IGI Origins is as good as they expect it to be. But nonetheless, do check out the video that is on screen, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It will greatly help out this channel. Anyways, my name is Tan2, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.